You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hey, Meat and Three listeners, it's Taylor Early.
And H. Conley, and we're bringing you something a bit different today.
We've been cooking up this project for a few months now, and we're so excited to share it with you. This is From the Pantry, a limited series brought to you by alumni of HRN's education programs.
We're former fellows and interns who learned storytelling and audio production here at HRN, and who grew from the conversations about food both on air and in community with each other.
We're telling stories inspired by HRN's 15 years of food radio. These are personal narratives about relationships to food, labor, environment, and so much more.
So, welcome to From the Pantry on HRN.
Up first, we have Sasha DuBose with their rice revelations.
So how do you know who you are and where you're from? Some of us have had stories of our people passed down from generation to generation. Others, like me, and food scholar and storyteller Sasha DuBose, have had to put the pieces together as they enter adulthood. For Sasha, food is the glue that holds these puzzle pieces together. And today, she's here to talk to me about her Gullah Geechee heritage. Sash, thank you for joining me on the pod.
Yay! Thank you for having me.
You all should probably recognize Sasha's voice. Sasha was an intern when we used to call it an internship. Sasha was with us spring of 2023, and we're very happy to have you back.
I'm happy to be here.
This whole process of digging into the HRN Pantry has been really cool, and I was very excited that you wanted to speak to me about your narrative project. So let's talk about what inspired you to start this series, your particular narrative arc.
Well, yes. As you brought up, I was a intern back when it was called internships. I'm a real OG. I've been been on the HRN train for a minute now. But one of my favorite stories that I did during that time as an intern, as a fellow, was my interview with Kayla Stewart about Gullah Geechee home cooking, which is a book that follows Emily Meggett. We love Emily Meggett. May she rest in peace. About her Gullah Geechee heritage, culture, et cetera, et cetera. And that book really changed the way that I view myself and my ancestry, and was one of the few times where I had something tangible that reflected who I am, where I'm from, what I eat, what my ancestors ate that wasn't like from my family, or wasn't like, oh, like this is a photo that my mom had, or like something from my family. I think there was something significant about it being like external, yet still telling me about myself and my heritage. And that was the first time That was the first time I've experienced that, like through food. So that was really lovely. So I get to return to that arc, or return to that part of myself in a way through my pantry work. So yeah.
Love Miss Emily. That book is so beautiful, and we also have no choice but to stand Miss Kayla Stewart.
No choice but to stand.
So speaking of your arc, how does this particular arc and the work that you are doing in the pantry connect to your larger work and your research?
Something that I know that I want to get more into this year is just like African American coastal foodways, specifically like East coastal foodways. That's where I'm from. That's where my family history kind of tracks along the East Coast. So I'm hoping this isn't my only story at HRN about coastal foodways. Hopefully you'll be hearing more from me soon. Fingers crossed. But yeah, my research more broadly is about African American foodways, and I've had to put it in a sentence. I feel like I explore how African Americans use their foodways as tools of survival, resistance, and like cultural expression. My work at HRN fits pretty well into that kind of description. I'm always blending like some sort of historical legacy or narrative with my own like personal lineages. So that's kind of how the work I do, or the work I did as a scholar, as an academic, combines with the work that I do as a producer, as someone who, you know, is engaging in a lot of audio storytelling lately. So yeah.
Absolutely. Something that I'm really enjoying having you back on the pod, as we say, but back in the fold, is the levity that you bring to our work. And so speaking of levity and the pantry, what do you hope to find in the pantry, and how do you feel that your episodes in this narrative arc can speak to that levity, literally, spiritually, and emotionally, and physically as well, which
Yeah.
Care to enlighten us?
Yes. I
The
will
physical aspect as well.
I'll definitely be exploring all of those things through my arc. I think especially shout out to my third episode where we get into some of those like physical, tangible. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing yet. Got to give y'all a reason to stick around, but I will be making something. Wink wink, hint hint. But yeah, I think something I was looking to find in the pantry is definitely that levity. Like, I'm African American. Like, my mom and I joke all the time that we can trace our ancestry all the way back to the boat. Like, I'm from the boat. Like, it is what it is.
Me too. Light bright from the boat.
We love that. And although we're able to talk, we're able to talk about that with such levity. There's still a heaviness to that. Like, that boat was hell. That journey was hell. Like, it is what it is. Like, there is such a heaviness to like our history and our lineages. And how do I express that in its truth of like, you know what? Not only was enslavement bad, like, we don't even really know how bad it was. Like, the worst parts of that history, have been lost, have been erased, etc. But the parts that we do have that we know that were really bad, like, how do I hold that while also creating room and space for hope? Because I feel like that's the real ancestral work of like, like my ancestors who were living through this hell also created room for hope, created room for that levity. So it's kind of like up to me to continue that work. I'm in the US, I'm in New Jersey. It's very dire times in this country, but I also think it's important to note that it's been dire. Like, if you're someone who knows and values history, whether it be through food or whether it be through like any other aspect of life, that things have been dire, So like none of this is new. But again, I feel like we return to the light. And that's what I found in the pantry, of just finding people whose stories are like mine, baking in ways that my ancestors might have, engaging with myself in the history that makes me me, from the tangible to the intangible, and then hoping that at the end of the day, like, my work inspires other African American folks, other people who might have an inkling that they might be Gullah Geechee, to put themselves and their histories together in their own way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of election day, I mean, you and I talked about this as well, where it was not a shock. It was just the work needing to continue, and with a even greater infusion of joy and curiosity and rest. And so I feel like you did a wonderful job of carrying all of those themes throughout throughout these episodes. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, and listeners, enjoy episode 1 of Sasha's narrative arc.
Yippee!
See y'all for episode 2.
You might be wondering, who exactly are the Gullah Geechee people? Well, let Dr. Etta Fields Black, an associate professor at Carnegie Mellon University's Department of History, teach you a lesson.
So the Gullah Geechee are the descendants of Blacks who were enslaved in the low country of South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida.
Dr. Fields Black is a Gullah girl, just like me. My sister, Kennedy, planted the seed that got us thinking about our heritage. She asked me one day if I knew anything about the Gullah Geechee people. I can't say I knew a lot at the time, but Ken started finding maps of plantations connected to our last name, all in the South Carolina Low Country. Because of these conversations, I can now trace my last name back to specific plantations. Dr. Fields Black recalls how she connected the dots of her own lineage.
This was the part of my family history that was known, that my dad's family was from the South Carolina and Georgia Low Country. I have never heard my dad speak Gullah Geechee, but he understood his parents and his grandmother who spoke deep Gullah. I knew what part of South Carolina my dad's family was from. We visited every summer. Did I know it was, that whole area was rice plantations? Not really. I didn't know at all. Family didn't talk about slavery. That's the last thing they wanted to talk about. They didn't want to talk about the past. They didn't want to talk about Jim Crow. They didn't want to talk about a lot of things. So no, I did not know.
My grandparents may not speak Gullah, but their southern accent is occasionally so thick that it does feel like they're speaking a different language. I've never spent a summer down south. Taking a 5-minute drive to my grandparents' house is as close as I can get. Their home is my portal to all kinds of southern sorcery. There are multiple ways that Black people inherit their culture and foodways. Some people are lucky enough to know their heritage all along. Chef and farmer Matthew Rayford is one of these immensely blessed people. He owns the land that his formerly enslaved great-great-great-grandfather bought nearly 150 years ago in the Georgia Lowcountry.
Jupiter Gilliard was able to actually purchase 476 acres of land for $9 in taxes in 1874, which is unimaginable nowadays because it would be a lot more than $9 for 476 acres of land. When he got this land, basically he passed the land down to his son, Lunan Gilliard, who had children.
His family found letters between his grandmother and great-grandmother about how certain things were planted and when they went to the market.
I think those things have become our farmer's almanac here at the farm for when we plant everything from collard greens to sweet potatoes to even harvesting hogs. I feel very fortunate to be on my own family's land and be the sixth generation to be here farming, and then to have my children be the seventh to have planted, harvested, and eaten from a crop from this land.
Many of us wish we could be as blessed as Matthew. I mean, I would do anything for letters between my ancestors, illustrating everything from our food ways to family practices. And there is nothing that gets me more excited than Black land stewardship. I may not have 476 acres to work with, but I am a proud Black steward of the 2 raised beds in my backyard and assorted propagated plants on my kitchen windowsill. Although he knew he was a Geechee boy his whole life, Matthew recalls taking it for granted at a young age.
I would definitely say that growing up, freshwater Geechee was kind of like always in our face. You know, when you're a kid, you're just like, man, I wish I could live in a city. I'm out in this country all the time. It's just a bunch of woods and mosquitoes and no-see-ums. Not really understanding the significance of where I was and how I was growing up. When you're out in the field helping your grandparents and helping your uncles harvest peas and greens and watermelon, you don't necessarily have the initial appreciation for it.
As someone who would consider themselves a certified city girl, a little slice of country life could do me some good. Minus the mosquitoes and no-see-ums, though. My story is a little different from Dr. Fields Black's and Matthew's, but somehow, like both of them, I know that I'm Gullah Geechee. After Ken convinced me with the maps, I felt the need to connect to my newfound heritage the only way I knew how. Through food. I mentioned this exploration to my partner at the time, and in turn, they gifted me Gullah Geechee home cooking. To this day, I think the editors of that book got photos from my camera roll for some of these recipes. Things I thought were family secrets, like adding an egg and evaporated milk in baked mac and cheese, were codified in print. The fried okra that I made so intuitively was identical to the recipe in the cookbook. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was surprised that this was my first time going through this cookbook. I flipped through every page like I had it for a billion years. The women, the oracles and elders, looks like photos I had on my mantle. I don't have any traditional records or tests to prove my Gullah Geechee-ness, but I have my mom's mac and cheese. I have okra, shrimp, and watermelon tattoos adorning my arms. I have my grandfather's voicemails, his languid southern accent straight from the South Carolina Lowcountry.
Hey, baby. I thought you was loving me. How long you been making good and you ain't called me? Mother.
That's your plan.
I'm gonna have to come over there. I don't know, come over there and do something. I don't know what I'm gonna do with you. I love you though.
Despite my own discoveries, I haven't touched one of the cornerstones of Gullah Geechee cuisine. That'll be the subject of my next episode, so stay hungry. Rice Revelations is conceptualized and produced by me, Sasha DuBose. You also heard from the beloved Taylor Early at the top of the episode. Sound design and mixing is by Sam Girardi. The Rice Revelations logo is designed by my sister, Kennedy DuBose. This episode of Rice Revelations features clips from Jupiter's Almanac and Fields. Hungry for more? Find the links to the full episodes as well as recipes and resources in our show notes.
This episode of From the Pantry was produced by Sasha DuBose, with support from Hannah Chenard, Sam Girardi, and Addison Austin Liu. From the Pantry is an original limited series that I developed for HRN. Our executive producers are H. Conley and me, Taylor Early. Our audio engineer is Sam Girardi. This program is supported, in part, by the Julia Child Foundation for Gastronomy and the Culinary Arts, as well as public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. From the Pantry is powered by Simplecast. From the Pantry is a production of Heritage Radio Network, the world's pioneer food radio station. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org and follow us at heritage_radio and at meaty.gram. And in case you haven't already, don't forget to sign up for our new and improved HRN newsletter. You can find the link in our show notes.